Hello viewers and learners of the Postgraduate Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health. Welcome to this session of Part 2 on the Industrial Safety and Management. And this forms a part of the course Industrial Sector with a course code of MEVE 004. I introduce myself as Dr. Sushmitha Baskar, working in the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies at Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. So in the previous session, we discussed about the industrial safety and some of the top accidents which have occurred in our country, and we have also seen how this safety is very important in an industry. Now let us go on to understand what is accident statistics and accident reporting and why this is important in any industry. So nearly 48,000 workers in our country, they die due to the occupational accidents. And in this, if we can see, 24% comes under the construction sector. So this sector alone, it is contributing to 24% of all the fatalities. And this was reported in an international report. Now the British Safety Council, this is a non-profit organization for the workplace health, safety and environmental management organization, and they have noted that in India, the workplace death is 20 times higher than that in Britain. So this is a very big number. We need to be aware of these statistics. In absolute terms, the fatalities are the highest in the industrialized states in our country. For example, Gujarat, in Maharashtra, and also the resource rich states where the mining activities are more, that is in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand. So here the major industrial activity is the mining activities. So the primary purpose of assembling and analyzing any occupational accident data, that is to provide knowledge for the use in the prevention of certain occupational injuries, fatalities and other forms of harm such as the toxic exposure, which can also have the long-term effects. And these data, so when you collect all this data, like for example, what are the industries that were surveyed, or in a specific industry when you take, for example, an iron and steel industry. So the employees who are working there, what are the typical types of the occupational injuries that are incurred by the employees who are working there? Then what are the fatalities and how many people have been injured with which instrument? And then whether they have had any toxic exposure to any kind of a chemical or the fumes, whether the effect was short term, whether it was long term. So and whether all the safety protocols, the training programs and the safety the devices, all these are in working condition. So when you write all this, when there is a kind of a reporting or a statistics which is being prepared, then these data that will help in useful, that is these data will be very useful in assessing the needs for compensating the victims for the injuries who are already previously injured. Additional and more specific purposes for the compilation of the accident statistics, they include, that is in order to estimate the cause and the magnitude of the accident problems, to identify and to prioritize the need for the preventive measures, evaluate the effectiveness of preventive measures and monitor the risk, issue the warnings and conduct the awareness campaigns. Also, we need to provide the feedback for those involved in the prevention and purposes. The need for accident information, it pertains to 3 levels of function that can make use of it. Now first level, that is at the workplace level within the individual enterprise, accident data are used in the local safety activities. So the best opportunities are for tackling the specific risk factors and they are to be found immediately at the workplace itself. So at the workplace level and there itself in the workplace, you will see that what are the problems that are encountered and you can tackle the specific risk factors. Now at the level of authority who are responsible for legislation, here the accident data are used in order to regulate the working environment and also to promote safety at the workplace. For example, the number of hours that is required to work in a factory, and you cannot overdo those number of hours. So you need some kind of a legislation, a law which is required, and that will maintain the proper work conditions. Now at the level of authority that is responsible for payments, that is for giving the compensation to the accident victims, accident data are very useful to help determine these rates. Specific information can also be recorded by way of describing an individual accident. So this is relevant to the task of preparing the statistics relating to the accident. For example, industrial safety. If you have to give an example here, a worker, he is working in an industry with any kind of the machinery, and he trips over a hose pipe while walking and he falls over this. In the process, his or her head gets hit against a table which is nearby, and the activity what the individual was performing was just walking. The injury event which occurred was tripping over that hose pipe, and the mode of injury is striking the head against the table. So these are the proper things, the statistics or the reporting which will be done, that what the individual was doing, how he got injured and how he got hit, and what was the level of the injury that occurred to the person. Therefore, accident reporting system is very important, and the objective is basically to avoid the recurrence of an accident thereafter. So accident on duty is to be reported to the various agencies, and if any accident arises due to or in the course of employment is called an accident on duty. Reporting in the industry or the factory accidents that can be categorized in the following sections. In the case of a fatal accident, the local police and the district administration will be informed. They should be informed and they should take the proper action. Now, in case of an emergency, that is a leaking of any toxic or flammable gas, spreading of any flammable liquid on a large area on the floors, then the concerned local authority, that is a factory inspector, the supervisor, they should be immediately informed and as per the emergency preparedness plan of the factory. Then the accidents are reported in a proper format which is also given, and that is prescribed by the factory's rules of the concerned state. Now, as per the Factory Act of 1948, section 88 and 88A, reportable accidents are to be reported to the factory inspector within 48 hours from the time of the accident. It should not be delayed, and basically reporting helps to avoid the recurrence of such the incidents or the accidents. So then this data, accident data, will be collected nationwide, and it is also analyzed by a panel of experts, and this will enable the government to formulate new policy, rules and also regulations. Safety audit. So that was everything about reporting. Safety audit, how we can define this? It is defined by the Health and Safety Executive as the systematic examination to determine whether activities and related results conforms to the planned arrangements and whether these arrangements are implemented effectively and they are suitable for achieving the organization policy and objectives. The effective health and safety audit not only provides a legal framework for compliance, it also lays the foundation for continuous safety improvement. Accident prevention. So now that we know about the accident statistics, accident reporting and safety audits, we should now know how to prevent the accidents. Basically, we can eliminate the hazard danger so that the injury damage is not there. And we need to provide separation and protection, that is, there should be separation between the worker and the equipment and the hazard that is occurring. We can provide shielding, this could be fireproofing, protective clothing that can be given to the employees, respirators to minimize the hazards. So they should also adapt to the hazard by providing the measures. For example, warning system should be in place, monitoring equipments are required, informations about danger need to be circulated, motivation for the safe behavior and training and education, that forms a very important part in accident prevention. Disaster planning. Therefore, we can define that a disaster is an unplanned event in which the needs of the affected community outweigh the available resources. A disaster can be man-made, it can be natural, it can be also technical. So there are several disasters. A natural disaster can be due to an earthquake, due to a volcanic hazard, and that can result in certain the groundwater pipes leaking or certain other problems. A man-made hazard is that a man or human or anthropogenic activity is responsible for a specific hazard, and technical is again all your hazardous faulty equipments which are occurring in the industrial sector, resulting in explosions and hazards. So all this can result in an event of substantial extent causing important physical damage or destruction, loss to life or also damage to the entire environment. The World Health Organization, they define disaster as a sudden ecological industrial safety phenomenon of sufficient magnitude to require external assistance. The American College of Emergency Physicians states that a disaster has occurred when the destructive effects of natural or man-made forces overwhelm the ability of a given area or community to meet the demand for health care. Now there are some more definitions, but the common denominator calls for a disruption of such a magnitude that the entire organization, the infrastructure and the resources of the community, they are all unable to return to normal condition following the event without any outside assistance. Therefore, the public attention that focuses on disaster planning and preparedness and the resources for improving response and resiliency surge. Let us now see one of the worst industrial disaster hazard which occurred, that is the case studies on the Bhopal gas tragedy which occurred on the night of 2nd and early morning of 3rd December 1984. So this occurred at a factory of the Union Carbide of India Limited. Here there was a leakage of the methyl isocyanate gas. In short form we say this as an MIC gas. UCIL, that is a Union Carbide of India Limited. This is a subsidiary of the multinational company Union Carbide Corporation in the United States of America, and this was in the business of manufacturing agricultural pesticides among many other things. So this MIC, this was a raw material and it was required in these manufacturing activities, and therefore it was manufactured and stored at the UCIL plant in Bhopal. Now what are the characteristics of methyl isocyanate? So this is extremely volatile and it vaporizes very easily. It can boil at a temperature of 38 degrees and therefore it is very important that this has to be kept cool. It is chemically very active and it reacts violently with the water. Therefore, it is highly toxic and it is about 100 times more lethal than cyanide gas itself. It is heavier than atmospheric air. It stays near the ground after its release. Now on the 3rd December 1984, tons and tons, about 45 tons of this MIC gas, it leaked, creating a poisonous grey cloud from this industrial pesticide plant at Bhopal. So this methyl isocyanate was stored in the storage tank number 610 in the underground tanks, which became contaminated with the water carrying this catalytic material. The contamination that produced a chemical reaction followed by a rise in the gas pressure and a subsequent leak. Let us see the chronology of the events which occurred and what happened. On December 2nd, 1984, this was a routine day, a very normal day. All the workers, the employees, they went to the plant and it was a normal day for all of them working at this factory. Now this MIC, methyl isocyanate, this was stored in an underground tank. The pipeline washing, this started at 9:30 p.m. that is in the night as a routine maintenance operation. They were doing this. Now between 10:30 and 11 p.m. in the night, the workers who were engaged in this pipeline washing, leak of this little attention was given, and they considered this was a normal leak and it is nothing to bother much about. A casual attempt was made to trace the source of the leak, but it was of no use. So the leak still continued. Around 12:15 and 12:30 am, that is early of 3rd December, the pressure in this MIC tank that went up to 55 pounds per square inch, which was the maximum that that gauge could actually read, and the temperature also shot up to 200 degrees and that was increasing. We have already seen the characteristics of MIC in the previous slides. So this has increased now the temperature to 200 degrees centigrade. One of the operators, he saw that the concrete above the tank was cracking, and at 12:30 am, this relief valve of the tank also gave way and large quantities of the MIC gas leaked into the atmosphere. So the workers of the factory realized that the risk of a massive disaster is on its way. They tried to activate the safety systems available in the factory. At the same time, the 3 safety systems were available within the factory, and their condition at that time, you can see, turning on the flare tower to burn off the toxic gas. This system, this could have actually helped in one way or the other But this system was not in working condition as a piece of that pipeline leading to the tower that had been removed for maintenance. Now, using the vent gas scrubber. So here again this was considered the main line of defense, that was also not in operational condition. So the second safety procedure not in working condition. Third is transferring the MIC from the tank into a nearby spare tank. The gauge of that spare tank indicated that the tank already contained something, and this gauge indicator was also found as defective later on. So all these three safety systems failed, and the workers attempted then to douse the leaking gas with water spray. The water spray reached a height of 100 feet above the ground, while the leak was 120 feet above the ground. At 1 a.m. they realized that now nothing can be done to stop the gas leak, and the workers at the plant, they started fleeing, they started running away from that place. And then at the same time, thousands of people who were living around the plant, they were awakened by the suffocating, by the burning effect of this gas. And on the three sides, this UCIL plant, it was surrounded by slums and also poor people who were living, the poor settlements. The people living in these conditions were the worst sufferers, and there was no warning or guidance to the general public at that time. So there were two types of alarms also in the factory. One is a mild siren for the workers and a loud siren for the public. The public siren that started only at 2:30 a.m. So you see, after how many hours of the gas leak, the public siren started. Now about 2 a.m. large number of people were actually rushing out of the town through the highways that were leaving Bhopal. Then the main roads were all congested, and this resulted in stampede, and 2 lakh people by then, by 3:30, they had fled the city. The gas cloud also dissipated around 3:30 a.m. and by 4 o'clock the hospitals were crowded with people suffering from the eye problems, the respiratory problems, suffocating gas and so on. So when the victims arrived at the hospital, they were breathless, they were blind, and the doctors themselves didn't know how to treat them. They were totally clueless, because the UCIL had not provided any kind of emergency information. In the wake of this tragic disaster, a large number of people, they lost their lives and they received injuries to the lungs and also to their eyes. The government reports, they reported that 1754, that is 1754 people died on the spot, and a 2 lakh and other people of 2 lakh were severely injured. It was only when the sun rose the next morning, the magnitude of that devastation was clear. Dead bodies of humans, of animals, they all blocked the streets. The leaves turned black, and the smell of this gas that lingered in the air. So you can see how disastrous and painful sight this would have been to see, and the people who have witnessed this incident. So this estimates, they suggested that as many 10,000 would have died immediately, and 30,000 to 50,000 were too ill to even return to their jobs. This catastrophe raised some serious ethical issues. The pesticide factory, this was built in the midst of a densely populated settlement. So how this could have been done? And then again, UCIL chose to store and produce MIC, one of the most deadly chemicals in that area, where 1,20,000 people lived. This was again another flaw. The MIC plant, this was not designed to handle a runaway reaction. When the uncontrolled reaction started, the MIC was flowing through the scrubber that was meant to neutralize the MIC emission at more than 200 times its designed capacity. So this MIC tank, it was filled to 87% of its capacity, while the maximum permissible limit itself was only 50%. So MIC was not stored at 0 degree. Refrigeration, cooling systems had been shut down for 5 months before the disaster as a part of their global economy drive. The gauges, the vital gauges and the indicators in the tank were also found to be defective. The flare tower, which the workers went on to turn on, that was meant to burn off this MIC emission, that was also under repair at the time of the disaster, and the scrubber contained no caustic soda. So as a part of their drive in order to cut the cost, the workforce in the Bhopal factory was also brought down from half, from 1980 to 1984. So this also had a serious consequence on the safety and the maintenance in the factory. The maintenance supervisor position, that had also been eliminated, and there was no maintenance supervisor. So the period of safety and training that was given to the workers in this MIC plant, that was also brought down from 6 months to just 15 days. So that was the entire chronology of what happened in the disastrous, the worst accident which could have occurred in our country, that is a Bhopal gas tragedy. So you have seen from that night, which was a very normal day on that day, on the 2nd of December, and how in just in 1 second, because of all these safety protocols not being in place and workers not knowing what to do, people leaving the place and the settlements that are surrounding that area, how many people were affected, and that one small defect and leak resulted in such a major catastrophe. Now there are some other top disasters also in the world. To name a few are that which occurred at Chernobyl in erstwhile USSR in Ukraine, the Banquet Dam collapse which occurred in China, the Halifax explosion which occurred in Canada, the Courier mine disaster which occurred in France, the Exxon Valdez oil spill which occurred in Alaska, and the Opau explosion which occurred in Germany. So these are some of other top disasters which have occurred globally. Therefore, we have seen the several industrial, the safety protocols, when they are tampered with, when the safety and the training procedures are not in place, when even you have seen in the Bhopal gas tragedy, when the training program was meant to be given for 6 months and that was just reduced to 15 days. So in that case, the employees, the workers who are working there will not get the complete skill development possible. They would not have understood how to operate in case of an emergency situation. So therefore, industrial safety is needed to check all the possible chances of accidents for preventing the loss of life and permanent disability of any industrial employee, any damage to the machine and material, as it can lead to the loss of the whole establishment. It is also needed to eliminate and prevent accidents in an industry by reducing any hazard to the minimum, reduce the workman's compensation insurance rate, and all the cost of the accidents. So this was about the industrial safety and management procedures which need to be done, otherwise the result can be disastrous. I hope you have had a good understanding of this session. Thank you for your patient listening.